Good day, good time of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are beginning our second lecture, and that's going to be, again, devoted to planning your classes, to planning your lessons. And today we're going to focus our attention on the design and the staging of your lessons. Okay, so little warming up. I'm going to present you 4 sentences that may summarize your understanding of a good lesson. So let's look at them. For example, a good lesson is like a film, or a good lesson is like a football match, or you may compare it to a meal or like a symphony. Well, can you choose one of the metaphors that you like best and explain it? Like, why do you think, for example, that a good lesson is like a film? Okay, take your time, record your answer, please. Thank you very much. Okay, now you have picked up one metaphor, you have chosen one idea. Can you now think about how you can implement this idea? Imagine that you're going to plan a 60-minute lesson on past simple that you're going to teach to an elementary class of adults. How is the metaphor that you have going to influence the way you plan this lesson? I know it's a very general and it's a very abstract question, but can you explain how you will implement your concept of a good lesson into a plan? How will this metaphor work in an actual plan? Okay, so please record your answer here. Thank you very much. I hope it was manageable. Okay, let's get going. Now, to the first thing, and it is sequencing the stages of your lesson. So we have got a task. Like we're going to write a story to practice past simple and past continuous. So this is what you're supposed to be doing with your students in the following lesson. Remember the task. You can take a screenshot if you like. Now, let's go to the thing. Well, here comes the procedure of this lesson plan. So these are the procedures which constitute this lesson plan, but they are jumbled, they are mixed up. Your task is to put them into the correct logical order, and then to give each stage a timing so that all these procedures fit within the framework of a 45-minute lesson. All right, so take your time, text me or make me a voice message about in what sequence you will place this procedures. You can just text or tell me the letters in a sequence, and how much time each letter is going to take. Thank you very much. Okay, now let me show you my ideas about this lesson plan. So you can see the first stage. I'm not going to comment on that. Let's look at the second one. I think it's going to be F, and I believe it's going to take about 5 minutes. Look, the way I mark the time here is not that it's going to take between 6 to 10 minutes. No, I mean, it's going to start on the 6th minute of the lesson and end up by the 10th minute of the lesson. So, and this is the way I really recommend you to time your lesson plans, not by the amount of time the procedure takes, but either with what time of the lesson, what minute of the lesson it starts with, and what minute of the lesson finishes with, or even better, if you know exactly at what time you're going to start your lesson, it's even more advisable to put the actual time on the clock that each stage starts and ends up. And it would be easier for you to compare your own pace to what you have planned. So for example, if you know that your lesson starts at 12:30, so it means that like around 12:40, you're going to be finishing your second stage. Yeah, I think it's a good second stage because after talking about favorite stories, it's a good idea to give out a short story that's going to be that's going to contain the examples of the language in focus, so to say. Okay, The third stage is going to be D. After the students got familiar to like the text, which contains the grammar, it's time to clarify the form, yes, to show the examples, to do the board work. And I think this stage will take about 7-8 minutes altogether. Yep. What is noticeable here is that the teacher does not completely explain everything, but like part of it is explained and part of it is given to the learner's choice. The learners always have to be alert, always have to be listening so that they would be able to do a follow-up activity or collaborate with the teacher to compose the rule, as in this situation. Okay, the fourth stage is B. After the material has been explained, it's really important to ask questions. So as if you remember, we would call them like concept checking questions or CCQs, right? Just to see if everything has been understood correctly. So that's gonna be kind of short sessions. Going to take about 1-2 minutes altogether. Okay, the following stage is number 5. Then some drilling comes, right? After the rule has been incorporated, now we're going to have some drilling, and that's going to take like 8-9 minutes altogether. And then we're coming up to the production. So that's stage A. You divide a class into groups, and each group makes up a story. So they are implementing the knowledge that they have gained from you in the introduction stage, right? So that's going to take quite some time. So like, 6-7 minutes altogether. Well, in the last stage, it's the follow-up of this speaking production activity, forming new groups comprising one person from each of the other groups. So they are telling stories to each other, and it's going to be the end of your lesson. So, well, could be one of the longest stages, about 9-10 minutes altogether. So here it is. Okay, let's get going. Well, this is probably just the better, representation of the plan. So you can take a screenshot if you like, for your own use. Okay, let's get going. Next is like planning decisions. Well, the first thing you could think about is the interaction patterns that you want to have within your lesson. It's important that your lesson represents a variety of interaction patterns. What are interaction patterns? Look at this top box. They are like students to text, students to students, students to teacher, students to students again. So this is who the students are interacting with, okay? And we have got a number of activities here. Could you decide which interaction pattern is best for each of the activities? For example, the first one, speaking activity, and the procedure, learners talk about their hobbies and interests in groups. So definitely this interaction pattern is going to be students to students. Okay, you get the idea? Now let's look at the second one. Task checking, report back, teacher asks the learners what they talked about. Okay, so what interaction pattern do you think is supposed to be used here? Thank you. And this is students to teacher, of course. Next one, reading for gist. Learners read the text quickly to understand the gist and answer questions. What interaction pattern is here? Thank you. Students to text. Checking answers, learners compare answers to reading. Thank you very much. Of course, students to students. Okay, good. Next. Continuing this talk about, interaction patterns, here we have a task. Have a look at that. Familiarize yourself with the task. You can pause the video. Well, the task I'm asking you to do here is, can you develop or upgrade this activity so that you could use a larger variety of interaction patterns within this exercise? So what can you do with this task? How can you alter this task in order to incorporate more different sorts of interaction patterns? Think about it. You could draft a little plan and then make me a voice message or text me your ideas. Thank you very much. Okay, Now, putting things on paper. Here we have a so-called pre-plan. So this is the thing which goes before the main body of your lesson plan. It's called a pre-plan, and typically it contains the main information about the class that you're going to teach. So that, for example, if a methodologist observing your lesson, he or she can pick up this pre-plan and just quickly understand the context within which you're working, right? And the typical elements of a pre-plan are the ones that you can see here. So there are aims, the level of your group, the length of the lesson, the class profile, and some anticipated problems and solutions to this problem. So could you please match the like titles of these pre-plan parts to the actual parts of the pre-plan? So could you, simply speaking, match numbers to letters? Thank you very much. So this is the way it looks. Check yourself, please. If you have any questions concerning this matching, text me. I will gladly answer them. Okay, let's get going. As you can see, point number 5 is anticipated problems and solutions. This is probably the one I would like to concentrate on. As for the aims, we have already talked about the aims. The level, the length of the lesson, and the class profile are the constants. But anticipated problems are always new. They're always, coming up. And that's a great idea to think about the problems before you start planning the lesson so that you could foresee them and you could kind of prevent them. Okay, let's get some practice with that. So if we consider that we could divide these problems, anticipated problems, into 3 categories, like linguistic problems, problems with language and language teaching, organizational problems, class management, this kind of things, and individual problems, the problems that are associated to some individual students that you have within your class. Okay, now let's look at this problem. The learners already know will and may overuse it, like they might want to use will in any situations when they talk about the future, right? Even if will is not appropriate. So what kind of problem do you think it is? Well, thank you. This is a linguistic problem, of course. Well, another one. The pair work exercise requires an even number of learners. For example, pairs, right? So it's possible that one or more may not attend, so that you would have an odd number of students in your class. What sort of problem is that? Organizational, absolutely. Boris, for example, is much stronger than the other learners and tends to answer every question I ask. What kind of problem is that? Thank you. So we could say it is an individual problem because it relates to one student in your class, to Boris. Okay, next problem. 3 or 4 learners tend to talk in Russian if they are asked to do a group work or a pair work exercise. Thank you. Well, here we could see that they are like organizational problems or individual problems, like both of them at the same time. Vova is very shy and won't say anything unless asked directly. What kind of problem is that? Thank you. This is an individual problem. Some learners have a problem with word stress and they are difficult to understand when they speak English. What kind of problem is that? Thank you. Oh, that's a linguistic problem. All right, now coming back to the problems again. So the first problem was the learners already know will and may overuse this. Can you recommend or can you give any solution, a possible solution to this problem? For example, if necessary, I will use a short discrimination exercise contrasting will and going to, or maybe some other ways of talking about future, right? This way you could try to avoid this problem. Well, let's get some practice. This is the second problem. Would you please suggest a solution to this problem? Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, my recommendation, and this is a typical recommendation people get from CELTA, is to use one group of 3 people. So instead of a pair, you just put 3 people together and they do the job as a 3. It's not really advisable to join or like an individual student to form a pair yourself, because this would deprive you of an opportunity to be overlooking the class, and it would be difficult to gain control of what's going on. So it's better to place 3 people in a group of, like, in a pair, in the virtual pair, so to say. Okay. Well, here we have this strong, enthusiastic student. Your ideas, how can we solve that? Thank you very much. Well, my idea is that the teacher could just nominate the other candidates, the other people to talk, thus manipulating the situation. Okay, one more problem. Your idea, please. Thank you. Well, there are a number of ways you can do this. For example, if you have like a multinational class, you can just jumble the students, mingle the students more, or you could like try to form a multinational class if it is possible. If it's a monolingual group, just try to avoid putting these particular guys together. You could also try to introduce some sort of rules about when we use Russian language and when we do not use the Russian language. Maybe sometimes just not letting these activities go on for a very long time would help, because quite often students switch to Russian when they have nothing to do. They have completed the exercise quickly, and then they're just chatting. Or maybe just giving clearer instructions would be kind of suitable. It sounds strange, but really quite often it works. If you limit somehow your students and audibly limit your students on their use of Russian language, it could really work, especially with the grown-ups. Okay, this shy student, your ideas? Thank you. Again, nomination could work here. You can just nominate the student whenever you want him to answer. And also you could use structured pair work, where the student can express himself, but he or she doesn't do it on the spot, like when everyone is looking at him or her. So a pair activity, a pair communication activity is a very good way to promote your student conversational skills. At the same time, not exposing your students to to be seen by everybody. Okay, and one more problem. Your ideas? Thank you. Well, probably the best idea would be just to do some stress drilling before going on to the freer speaking activity, just to remind your students about the stress, or to do some practice with that before they can actually delve into freeway conversation. All right, now a little bit of reflection. Well, you will see a number of teachers sharing their concept of planning lessons, their ideas on planning lessons. I would like you to have a look at all of these teachers, and then in the end, tell me which teacher are you mostly like at the moment and why. Okay, let's look at these sample teachers. Karina, take a look at Karina's idea of planning. You can try to remember, or you can just, come back to this place to see it in details again. Well, the next one is Kaylee. Probably this is how I say this name correctly. Okay, have a look at this. You can pause if you want to, if you need time to read. Okay, this is Maria. Richard. And Tom. Okay, all of them. So who are you mostly like at the moment and why? Thank you. Well, I guess we've just come to the end of the story for today. Thanks a lot. I hope it was not tedious. I hope you have gone through everything all right. And see you in a week's time.